Imagine a book so massive and mysterious that it's said to be written in a single night by a monk who sold his soul to the devil. A book with secrets hidden in its pages that have confused historians for centuries. Our story begins in the early 13th century in a place called the Kingdom of Bohemia, which is now part of the Czech Republic. In this kingdom, there was a Benedictine monastery in a place called Podlejec. This is where one of the most mysterious books in the world was created, the Codex Gigas, also known as the Devil's Bible. One day, a monk named Herman the Recluse broke the strict rules of the monastery. His mistake was so serious that he was sentenced to be walled up alive. Basically, they were going to seal him inside a wall until he died. Scared and desperate, Herman begged for mercy. The head monk then gave him a terrifying challenge. If Herman wanted to escape his terrible punishment, he had to write a book that contained all the knowledge of the world in just one night. This task seemed impossible, but why did Herman break the rules? What could have made him do something so bad that he faced such a harsh punishment? With no other choice, Herman began working on the huge book. As midnight came, he realized that he could never finish the book on his own. In his desperation, Herman made a shocking decision. Instead of praying to God for help, he called out to the devil. The legend says that the devil appeared and agreed to help Herman finish the book, but only if Herman gave him his soul in return. What was so special about this book that Herman was willing to make such a scary deal? According to the legend, the devil worked all night and finished the book just before dawn. But when morning came, Herman not only lost his soul, he also lost his life. The head monk found Herman dead the next morning, but beside him was a gigantic book. This book was so big, it weighed 160 pounds, and its pages were made from the skins of calves and donkeys. It was about 36 inches long and filled with beautiful drawings. But what was inside this book that made it so important? Why did it lead to such a dramatic event? The Codex Gigas was completed around the year 1222. The first page of the book has a note that mentions the Podlejec monastery, which means that's where the book was made. Later, in 1295, the monastery gave the book to another monastery called the Sedlec monastery, which then sold it to a third monastery in the same year. Fast forward to 1594, when Emperor Rudolf II, who was the king of Bohemia at the time, borrowed the Codex Gigas from the monastery's library. He liked the book so much that he didn't want to give it back and kept it in his own collection. There's a legend that says Rudolf II was especially interested in a picture of the devil on page 577. But why was this picture so interesting to him? What did he see in it that made him so curious? This leads us to ask, why is there such a scary picture of the devil in the Codex Gigas? Some stories say that Herman drew it to thank the devil for finishing the book. Whether that's true or not, the book stayed in Prague as part of Rudolf II's collection. But things didn't go well for the emperor. People say that the Codex Gigas cursed him, leading to him losing his throne to his younger brother in 1612, and then he died shortly after. Was this really the Codex's curse? Even after Rudolf II died, the Codex Gigas remained in Prague for several years until the 30 Years' War broke out in Europe in 1618. At the end of the war, the Swedish army took the book back to Sweden. In 1649, it was placed in the Royal Swedish Library in Stockholm, where it became part of Queen Christina's personal collection. But Queen Christina also faced bad luck. She lost her throne in 1654 and moved to Rome. It's said she took many of her books with her, but the Codex Gigas stayed behind in Sweden. Why did this book seem to bring bad luck to everyone who owned it? In 1697, the Codex Gigas faced another danger. The Royal Library was caught on fire. The fire destroyed much of the palace, but somehow the Codex Gigas wasn't harmed at all. How could this ancient book survive such a big fire? Was it just luck, or did it have some kind of special power like the legends suggest? After the fire, the Codex Gigas was moved to a new royal palace in Stockholm in 1768. Where it was kept safe. In 1786, it was placed in the treasury room of the National Library of Sweden, where it still remains today. But unlike other old books, the Codex Gigas is kept under a closed cover, which means visitors can't flip through its pages. Why is this? What makes this book so mysterious that it needs to be so carefully protected? The Codex Gigas isn't just a regular book. It's a huge collection of knowledge. It contains the entire Bible written in Latin, along with other important writings related to Christianity. But what makes it even stranger is that in the later sections of the book, there are magical formulas, spells, and mantras. These are believed to be ways to summon or get rid of spirits. The book also includes information about Bohemian history, a calendar, and even a map that is thought to show heaven. But here's something really odd. This map doesn't have any angels or heavenly beings in it at all. Why would a map of heaven not show any angels? What was the purpose of this map, and what does it mean? Just before this map, there are several pages where Herman wrote in big capital letters, confessing his sins and asking for forgiveness. What were these sins, and why did Herman feel the need to write them down in such a special way? The picture of the devil on page 577 is one of the most puzzling things about the Codex Gigas. The devil is shown wearing a fancy cloth called an ermine loincloth. which was usually reserved for royalty. This is why the devil in the picture is sometimes called the Prince of Darkness. But did Herman really draw this picture himself, or was it the work of the devil, as some people believe? Friends, the Codex Gigas is filled with beautiful drawings and decorations on nearly every page. The handwriting throughout the book is very neat and looks the same from the beginning to the end. Remember, back then, there were no printing presses, so this 630-page book was written entirely by hand. But how could one person finish this huge task in just one night? This is why some experts think there might be some truth to the story that the devil helped write the book. But do we really know for sure that it was written in one night? It's possible that Herman spent his entire life writing it, or maybe other monks helped him. Some experts believe that if one person worked on it alone, it would have taken about 20 years to finish. But there's something strange about that idea too. If you look closely at the writing, you'll see that the handwriting and ink are the same from the first page to the last. If different people had worked on it, wouldn't the handwriting look different? And if one person wrote it over 20 or 25 years, their handwriting would probably have changed over time. People's handwriting usually changes as they get older. It's also amazing to see that the entire book has no mistakes. The writing is so perfectly done that it looks like it was printed, even though it was all written by hand. When you think about these details, it's hard not to wonder if some kind of dark power was involved in creating this book. Could it really have been written by the devil? Another strange thing about the Codex Gigas is that on the first page, there are 2 Hebrew letters, but the rest of the book is written entirely in Latin, and there's no more Hebrew anywhere else. What could this mean? Could it be a clue that Herman started writing the book, but the devil finished it? Or is there another explanation for these mysterious letters? The Codex Gigas we have today is not complete. It's missing 10 pages, but where did these pages go? Some people think they were removed because they contained something dangerous, like prayers to summon the devil. Others believe the missing pages might have had the rules of the Benedictine monastery written on them, but it seems unlikely that so many pages would be needed just for that. There's even a wild idea that the missing pages contain prophecies about the end of the world, predictions so scary that they were taken out to protect people from knowing the future. The truth is, we don't know what was on those pages, and without them, we can only guess. The Codex Gigas isn't just mysterious because of what's inside it. There are also strange stories about things that have happened around it. One of the creepiest stories comes from 1881. A librarian was working late in the Royal Library in Stockholm, where the Codex Gigas was kept. The library was closed and the librarian fell asleep. But when he woke up in the middle of the night, he saw something terrifying. Books were floating off the shelves and spinning around in the air as if they were alive. The books seemed to gather around the Codex Gigas, which then somehow lifted itself out of its cover and joined the other books in the air. The next morning, when the other library staff arrived, they found the librarian hiding under a table, shaking with fear. Whatever he saw that night scared him so much that his mind never recovered. He had to be taken to a special hospital where he could be cared for. What could have caused such a frightening event? Was it just his imagination, or did the Codex Gigas really unleash some kind of dark power that night? Even though the Codex Gigas has been passed from one owner to another over the centuries, no one has ever tried to make a copy of it. Is it because the task is just too big, or is there a fear that the curse that seems to follow the book might affect anyone who tries to replicate it? Today, you can still see the Codex Gigas in the National Library of Sweden in Stockholm, where it is kept safe and secure. What do you think? Was the Codex Gigas really written by the devil, or is there an even deeper mystery behind its creation? Could it be that Herman the Recluse, in his desperation, tapped into something beyond human understanding? Or is the Codex Gigas just an incredible piece of medieval craftsmanship surrounded by stories that have grown over time? If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends.